Issue 2, Kerry's critics.
Make no mistake, when the people of Israel are rushing to bomb shelters, when innocent Israeli and Palestinian teenagers are abducted and murdered, when hundreds of innocent civilians have lost their lives, I will and we will make no apologies for our engagement.
With the combat between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip now entering its 4th week, efforts to broker a ceasefire have taken on an air of urgency. In late June, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi proposed an unconditional ceasefire. Israel embraced it. Hamas rejected it. This week, Secretary of State John Kerry jettisoned the Egyptian plan and instead adopted a proposal floated by Turkey and Qatar, allies of Hamas. The plan includes Hamas's demands to lift Israel's 8-year-long blockade, but is silent on Israel's demands for the demilitarization of Gaza, including the destruction of Hamas's tunnel network and rocket stockpile. Israeli officials went ballistic last weekend after Secretary Kerry abruptly changed the terms. And on background, the Israelis vented their outrage to the press. Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, said this, quote, "Very senior officials in Jerusalem described the proposal that Kerry put on the table as a quote-unquote strategic terrorist attack. His decision to go hand in hand with Qatar and Turkey and formulate a framework amazingly similar to the Hamas framework was catastrophic," unquote. The chief editor of the Times of Israel was even more acerbic, quote, "Whether through ineptitude, malice, or both, Kerry's intervention was not a case of America's top diplomat coming to our region to help ensure, through astute negotiation, the protection of a key ally. This was a betrayal," unquote. Haaretz columnist Shami Shalev was succinct. He dubbed Kerry a, quote, "hapless nebbish," unquote. Obama administration officials are bristling over the criticism of Kerry's initiative. Since 1945, Israel has been the single largest beneficiary of U.S. foreign and military aid to the cumulative amount of $181 billion.
Also on Friday, Secretary Kerry condemned the quote-unquote outrageous Palestinian violations of the Gaza ceasefire. Question, is the criticism of Secretary Kerry warranted, or is it over the top? I ask you, Mort.
Well, at the very specific issue of his coming in with a peace proposal that came from Qatar. Qatar, by the way, is the financier of Hamas, and Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. So this is not exactly a favorite of Israel. And joining that with Turkey, whose leader, Erdogan, is the worst and most anti-Semitic leader in the Middle East, okay? Those two form a program, and Kerry carries it in as a proposal with the United States blessing, did not go over well, to put it mildly, okay?
A lead balloon.
It was a very, very bad move. It's already been completely disengaged from the process. They've come back with a new series. The Israelis have a very simple problem. They have got to prevent their own people from being bombed with missiles and being attacked through these tunnels that are under them. These are strategic threats to Israel, and they are going to respond to it. And this is something that is not going to change because of Kerry coming in under this way. He's come back with a different proposal, with a short-term ceasefire, which ended after about 3 hours when the Palestinians attacked and killed a couple of Israeli soldiers and captured one, which is just another way to explode any possibility of an agreement.
The death toll is 1445, Hamas, Israel 56. What about the Fatah wing of the Palestinians? Is he playing any role now in anything?
No, right now, at this point, they will have to play a role if this is ever going to be resolved, because the Israelis can deal with Mahmoud Abbas. They cannot deal with, needless to say, with the kind of people who are in Gaza.
The peace process is dead as it can be. John, but look, it's not only Israel that's got a hard time with Qatar and Turkey, but the Egyptians and the Jordanians and the Saudis and the others are very much in Israel's camp in this war. They're silent cheerleaders for Israel, and they were appalled. But there's a new division in the Middle East, and what is happening to Turkey is something. I mean, that's a NATO ally, but they are savagely anti-Israel, and they're comparing them with Nazis. That's a NATO ally of the United States.
What kind of grades do you give to the Secretary of State?
Well, I give him at this point a B, and I'm trying to be generous because I think he actually changed the whole atmosphere in terms of that coming in with that proposal, as Pat was saying, from the two countries who are the least.
Qatar.
Yes, I mean Qatar.
Okay, hold on, I'll let you right in. Okay, there's a follow-up to here, and the fallout grows. It's not just the Israelis who are unhappy.
After Jerusalem, Secretary Kerry went to Paris, where he met with the foreign ministers of Turkey and Qatar, excluding regional U.S. allies like Jordan and Saudi Arabia. Egypt's foreign minister was invited, but turned Kerry down. And get this, the Palestinian Authority's Mahmoud Abbas is also piqued. He issued a blunt statement to Hamas that those who side with Turkey and Qatar can go and live there.
Question: how did the Obama administration manage to simultaneously alienate Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, and the Fatah wing of the Palestinians? I ask you, Tom.
Yeah, I think what we've seen here is a consolidation of power. We have El-Sisi in Egypt, much stronger in terms of an anti-position against Hamas. But I think the issue, going back to John Kerry, is that you have to speak to Qatar to some degree because they're the tap for Hamas. So if you want to cut off the money for Hamas and compel them to the peace process, Qatar is necessary. Erdogan, yes, as a populist, he's gaming this. It's public appeal at home. But ultimately has to come down to Egypt. And I think the problem, going back to this question, is that Kerry hasn't been astute to the fact that all these dynamics in the Middle East are underway with regional power games, and he's sort of tried to meander his way through, and perception drives reality.
He doesn't know. Is the fact that the deal could be moved forward or cut in Egypt more likely, less likely, or?
Oh, yeah,
I think much more likely.
Much more likely.
It's not just Egypt. It's not just Egypt. You understand? It is Egypt. It is Saudi Arabia. It is the UAE. Right. It is. Qatar is the financier of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Would the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, shall I put it this way, save face if the deal were cut with some kind of a relationship, an intrusion? A benign intrusion of Egypt.
Of course.
Egypt is critical,
Mubarak did this before, okay?
Yeah.
Mubarak went against the radicals in that part of the world. Mubarak and Sisi himself, they're much closer to where we are. They're much closer to where Egypt is.
I want to end quickly, five seconds.
Egypt is very anti-Hamas, as is most of the countries you've mentioned. Hamas is isolated, but at some point their concerns are going to have to be dealt with. Only two countries deal with them, Qatar and Turkey, and Kerry has to open up lines to them, or else you can't speak to Hamas. He's doing the right thing as a fair-minded diplomat.
Right, well stated.
Kerry's problem is he doesn't understand the new realities of the Middle East.
This is true, but
now.
I think he's a quick learner and a fast learner. Issue 3, break out the champagne.
Good news from the Commerce Department. Commerce reported this week that second quarter GDP, that's gross domestic product growth, from April to June was at 4%, up from the dismal first quarter 2.1% contraction, which was partly attributed to the long, bitter winter. The 4% GDP growth rate exceeded economists' expectations by a full percentage point. That good economy news is accompanied by more good economy news. Item: consumer confidence up from 86.4 in June to 90.9 in July, the highest the index put out by the Conference Board has been in 7 years, since October 2007. Item: consumer spending up from a first quarter hike of 1.2% to a second quarter hike of 2.5%. Item: business investment up, way up, from a first quarter increase of 1.6% to a second quarter surge of 5.5%. Item: private sector job growth steady. 218,000 private sector new jobs were added in July as compared to 281,000 new jobs in June, still acknowledged to be a good, solid number.
Also, the Labor Department announced on Friday that 209,000 new jobs had been added to the economy in July. The unemployment rate rose slightly from 6.1% in June to 6.2% in July. Average hourly earnings, $24.95. Question, how do these numbers sound to you, Mort Zuckerman?
Well, they are a part of where we are, but it's not, in my judgment, a very encouraging part, because you have, when you say the economy has grown by 4%, it declined by 2.1% in the first quarter, so the average growth for the 6 months is 2%. That's literally nominal growth in this economy. We have been growing at a rate of 2% for the last 5 or 6 years, which is much lower than the normal rate of growth. So we are still in an economy which has a lot of problems. We have a huge level of unemployment. A lot of the employment numbers you're seeing here are part-time employees. They're not really full-time employees. There are only 47 million full-time employees in this economy, which is a very, very low number. So we are still in very, very difficult macroeconomic problems.
Well, more jobs have been created in the first half of this year than at any time since 1999. So the whole Bush administration fell below this time. I mean, we ought to cheer a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I agree. There's lots more to be done. The quality of jobs, the wages need to be raised, and the president himself is out there saying he's trying to get cooperation from Congress on a number of these things. Because a small sliver of Americans are doing extremely well. A lot of people have been left behind.
Okay, Tom and Pat, can you speak to a new report from the Urban Institute that shows that 77 million Americans, 35%, have debt that has been referred to collection agency? How bad is that bad?
Well, John, it's located in the South and the West, and quite frankly, it is many minorities and poor folks who have this particular problem. But and that's bad news. But I'll tell you one thing: we have a Fed-fueled economy. You got the stock market went shooting up to 17,500, just lost about 1,000 points in the month of July, maybe a little less than that. And the stock market is a lead indicator of where you're going.
Yeah. You got 10 seconds.
Yeah, I still think there's slack in the labor market. My concern, though, as a younger American, is that if you look at the CBO report 2018, the deficit starts going up. People are not saving enough. What happens if we don't have entitlement reform? My generation has a big problem.
Good perceptions here. Predictions, Pat.
Well, Scotland's secession is touch and go. Catalonia may be voting on a secession from Spain this fall. If they do, Catalonia will succeed.
CIA Director John Brennan apologized for the CIA spying on the Senate and hacking into their computers. There are calls for his resignation from Democratic senators. He will survive.
Tom.
I think Scotland stays as part of the United Kingdom. The polls have tightened, but I think that that will be the outcome.
Interesting. Mort?
Notwithstanding the fumbling to date, there will be a ceasefire that will be agreed to between Hamas and the Israelis.
I predict that Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, will not seek the presidency in 2016. By the way, the Steamboat Institute in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, has just named Tom Rogan, on my left, the first recipient of its annual Tony Blankley Chair for Public Policy and American Exceptionalism. Congratulations, Tom.
Thank you.
Following in Tony's footsteps is no small feat. Yes, feet, pun intended, especially on the sartorial front. Right. Bye-bye.
The McLaughlin Group is brought to you by Siemens. Every day, Siemens Answers are helping build the future of America. Siemens Answers.
We never thought we'd be farming wind out here.
It's not just building jobs here, it's helping our community.
Siemens' location here has just received a major order of wind turbines.
It puts a huge smile on my face because I'm like, this is what we do.
The fact that Iowa is leading the way in wind energy, I'm so proud. Like, it's just amazing.